Welcome everyone on this again beautiful Thursday from sunny, rainy Florida. My gosh, it is hot here and humid, but still loving it. Last week when oh no, should I introduce myself? I probably should. This is Toni Weel. We have with us my co-host Sara from Virtuous Unicorns. We have with us Katie Meert. I always love to listen to her too. She has so many. See, we started out with Katie on the podcast, and Katie was the one who always had a ton of questions, and we actually all learned so much from her questions. So if you want to hear her and all her questions getting answered, go back to previous podcast. And then we have with us Gary Parent, who is always amazing with all his teachings on the breath and how important it is, how it can affect really everything, what's going on with your health. And we have Seth with us, who is amazing with all his research and knowledge and understanding of everything and explaining. We only have an hour to an hour and a half, so we have to give each other the chance to talk about the topic, which is divine synchronicity. And we came to that because at the end of last week's podcast, Sara, but we were already ending it, but Sara had to really chime in and share with us what had happened with her and her enthusiasm. I mean, it felt to me, Sara, like you were always almost jumping. There was so much energy. And so it was like, okay, we have to talk about this because this was so beautiful what she had to share. And then I realized we all have things like this happening in our life. And sometimes we don't realize what's going on. Sometimes we only see it afterwards, like, oh, okay, that was nice. But now what if we can see it while we're right in those situations and we see how everything is playing out and playing out the way it should be, and it's all coming to you. And it's absolutely beautiful. So I would like to give Sara the first chance to go into that story again because that was the reason for this particular podcast. So Sara, please go ahead.
Thank you, Tony. And again, like I said, I don't have Wi-Fi today, so if anyone's having trouble hearing me, please let me know. Just cut me off. But I don't know. I don't know if I've like really talked about everything fully, but I did have like where I had my horse literally right next door to me, and it kept coming back and forth where we were buying the farm. We were buying the farm, not buying the farm. It was for sale. It wasn't for sale. Just all these things back and forth. There was some really weird kind of sketchy things going on, like gates were being left open and everything. And then I was told that we had to leave for I don't know. They were going to turn the barn into like a garage or something. I don't know. But anyway, so I was very stressed. I was very worried. Where am I going to move my horse? And my horse is older too, even though he still acts like he's two, but he's definitely older. I've had him for 20 years. And so it was very stressing. And I just kept trying my hardest. I got to hand this over to God. I kept doing my prayers. I kept just trying to trust the process. And I that's all I could do. I couldn't find anything. And then I was just driving around, and there's always been this one farm that I would drive by when we'd go on our motorcycle rides. And I just fell in love with this farm. And I drove by and I never saw a sign before. And then all of a sudden, there's this old sign. It's not old, it's like a stone sign that had been forever, but I've never seen it before. And so I looked it up and I found like a site or something about it. And I called the phone number, left voicemail. Nobody ever called me back. I did end up having to move my horse to another place, which through that process, I met this amazing person who does trailering of horses. And
We lost you there, Sara.
oh, I'm sorry. And she so she calls me, and then she said, I'm not sure. I don't know if we want to take on a boarder. We lost one of our other horses, but something told me to call you. And I said, well, it was me because I've been praying so hard for this. And so we talked, and she said, I'm going to come get you today. And I was like, well, I can't, like today, but it was just the enthusiasm. But anyway, I ended up moving there within 3 days. And it's been just a godsend. There are female horses there, which are called mares. And there's a couple, there's one other boy there. And it's like heaven on earth. The place is from the 1700s, and the barn is beautiful. Everything is beautiful. And it's just how, when you really trust and you try, and don't get me wrong, I was super worried. I cried. I was upset. I was sick. I was just everything, but I just kept giving it over and just kept trusting, even though I was nervous inside, and how it worked out. And I have like a few extra friends now from this whole journey. He is so happy there. And I don't even have to go take care of him every day. I can show up and see him every day, no matter what. But there's people there to help me and everything too. And how it all just, there was this week I was sitting, wanting to remember this for that too. That's how almost everything works. Like, so like um like if you can, you trust somebody, can you trust a situation, or is this person doing this? We can't always like worry and intermingle with all that stuff. Everything just about being virtuous within your, conduct your day, all
You're cutting
in a
out again,
relationship.
Sarah.
Oh, oh, I'm sorry. God will just always make sure that you're protected, and nothing happens until it's ready to happen. And it'll happen at the exact moment and at the exact time. Like I said, it took her over a week to even contact me after I left a voicemail. And it just happened at the exact time. So definitely trusting God, trust that He'll provide you with everything. And we have the inner knowing. So just trust the process and trust that you're with the right people, and the right people will show up at the exact time you need them.
Oh my gosh, Sarah, you are absolutely so right. It's almost as if you and I were going through not the same situation, but going through the same like emotional, faithful kind of a thing, because I have had to step away from all social media because I had to go through into the desert, I've been calling it, all by myself. I have been kind of stressed, worried, all these things I know not to, because I do believe, I trust God 100%. I say that all the time. And I had that faith, knowing that this is my time to focus on you, trust you. I'm going through a process right now. It kind of is making me a little sick because I now see what I'm going to lose, and I'm a little sad about losing what I'm going to lose. I kind of was fighting it because that's what my ego likes to do. But then it was all of a sudden, as the weeks have been going on, each day, each week, I turned that ego into more of acceptance and saying, this is what it is. Thank you for letting me know. I trust you. I trust this process. And now I'm in a better place. And everything is being provided for me. And I can see the path that is the road that I'm going to be traveling on to get to where I know God. So God showed me where I'm going to end up. And now I can see how this path is getting me. It's kind of like, the rainbow, how the rainbow leads to the pot of gold. It's kind of like at first I was in the storm with the rain, and now I'm walking the path of the rainbow, and I'm going to get to the gold. So it's so interesting that you and I were going through different situations, but yet we were experiencing the same thing. So it's good to be back here, and I'm so looking forward to the show today.
I just want to say one more other thing on that is that, and that's why we've both been I haven't been on Facebook and we haven't been doing our show. I've been so consumed with that. And the other thing that I did too was when I reacted a certain way, when I went into my prayer, which I just do the Lord's Prayer, and that's my intro to my meditation, I was saying to myself, I understand why I acted like that. And I'm sorry that I did. And I should be trusting and just sending those vibes and those thoughts. And when I came out of that meditation, it was in 15 minutes, I got a chance to react again to that situation. And that time I was prepared. It was like I immediately got my second chance to react differently. And when I did, another door opened. I mean, it was just, I don't know. It blows my mind. And it's like we know the secrets and we're starting to unlock them and start to follow the path of those secrets where they're leading us.
And yes, Sarah, and you know what? This is so good that all of us here are just being open and honest. And all of us, we love God with our whole hearts and we are following his will for us. And each day we put best effort forward to live in alignment to how he created us. But even though this is us and we are the leaders of, for humanity to make these changes that we've been talking about here on this show, as well as our own show, you can still see where we too can stumble, fall back a little bit, and still have all of this gnosis but even though we fall back, we still trust the plan. We make it better. When you know better, do better, but we still experience these things. So we're just being open and honest. And this way we are helping others who find themselves in the same situation. So yes, very, very beautiful. And, I never doubt God. It's just, sometimes that ego does get the little bit of the best of us. And when one thing, the reason why I had to step away from all social media is because this is prior to when the recording started, but Gary, beautiful. Gary said, you have to get grounded in yourself and not get caught up in the outside world. And that's really important. So that's what I had to do. I had to just ground myself and let go of all social media. And unfortunately, I did let go. I haven't talked to some of my friends from this family that I've created online. I just had to step away because I started letting their opinions and of what I should be doing kind of like, it didn't feel right to me, but I didn't want to, I like to listen to other people, but I didn't want to like argue with them and say, well, that's not what I feel like. So I just had to say, you know what? I just need to have my quiet time. I need to get grounded with myself. I just needed to be with God and let him be in control. And but now I'm in a better place and I'm so excited to be back here and reconnect and just share our journey with one another. And this is all synchronicities. And that's what this show is all about. So again, I'll stop talking now because I know everybody has something beautiful to share and I'm just really excited to be a part of it.
Gary?
Good, I will, yes. So Carl Jung is the one who came up with synchronicity.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen to me more times. I came back from Rhode Island, back here to Maine, and I was talking with one of my friends, and he needed somebody to run a crew for him. He has a contracting business. So he asked me if I wanted to be the foreman. Well, the crew only spoke Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish, and they didn't speak English. So we used the cell phone, and we communicated back and forth, and we did a ton of work. And at the end of it, I've always wanted, it's called the ProMaster City Ram. It's a van. It's not full size, and it's not a small van. It's right in between. And he had one out back that nobody was using, so he gave it to me. And we ended up, I bought it for $1 because we had to do the legal stuff. But you never know. I had no idea he was going to do that. But there's so many amazing things that have happened that you just surrender to it. I didn't even think about it. That's usually when it happens. The phone rings and like when I was at the shop, when I had the sign shop, and Natalie would go to pick up the phone, and she says, "I wonder who that is." And I said, "That's so and so to order the sign," and that's who it would be. And we had hundreds of customers, but when you're in that zone, in that tune, in that frequency, and the other ones aren't interrupting because you kind of step out of the way, that's when synchronicity works the best. Is we have the thought, we let it go, and it's still there though. It's a frequency within us, and it's out there searching. And when it hits a frequency that matches it, all of a sudden that comes into your life. And that's how important it is to really let go of our limitations. Every emotion has a breath associated with it, and every breath, an emotion, every emotion, a breath. I guess that's how I want to say that. And so all our limitations, our fears, our traumas, they come in through the breath and they lodge in different places in the body. And the way to get them out is through breath, because that's how they went in. And once our limitations start to diminish, this frequency out here of trauma or fear or whatever it is, as we breathe and we are becoming no one, nowhere, no place, no time, these frequencies start to weaken. And they have a lot of power over us, many of them. But as they start to weaken, that limitation starts to go away. And when it's gone, we don't have a fear of moving forward. We don't have a fear of what somebody else's opinion is of us. We don't have a fear of loss because we already know how to get things. So even if we have to start over, we have a good idea what we want, and we start building a new life. And synchronicity is a huge part of that, because if you're truly in line and in tune with what you want to do, like one of the examples is I grew up not being able to read or write. Even when I graduated from high school, I was a sign painter that could work in any language, even though I couldn't read or write, because they're just symbols. They're just, an R is an R, and I can make it fancy or I can make it plain. So I found out when I was 38 that I was dyslexic. I already had the shop, and all my designs were based on legibility from different distances. But I had a whole different way of doing my signs, my sculptures, all those kind of things. But they're all in the breath. But the one thing I feared was people would find out that I couldn't read or write. And then there was a breakup in the relationship, and I couldn't do the books because, I couldn't read or write. So I bought a van, spent 6 years traveling around the country, taught myself to read and write. And through, not me, but through me, came a book called Prisoners of Our Own Beliefs. And who am I to write something when I was still learning to read and write when that book kind of took shape. That, to me, that's synchronicity. I was on a mission to learn to read and write. And that's what I did in the van in that 6 years, was teach myself. I'm not saying I'm great at it, but a book came out of it. Who knew? So there are many things that happen in our life. I'm having a hard time saying this now, as I think about things, but it's always the darkest before the light. So it doesn't always have to be the darkest before the light. The light can show up anytime. We are light. Light comes down, hits our energy centers, which are light-based. We're a light-based being, and we can have anything we want, except the system is a stressful system, the matrix. To stand inside yourself is a relaxation. So when we're in the matrix and we get caught up in that chaos, it throws our tune out of balance. And that's when we get all these little frequencies coming in that set our limitations. And to be able to step through that and realize and be the observer. I observe conversations. I'm not involved in them anymore the way I used to be, because I used to get angry. Well, now I have, this is me over here now. And the information they're speaking goes here. It's being filtered. Then it comes to me, and I can observe it and rationalize through it, take that which is useful to me and disregard the rest with no emotion. Because the whole matrix is based on emotion. You pay, you chase, you have to qualify, you have to take tests. And when you just learn to breathe and become no one, nowhere, no place, no time, all information will come to you from the universe for free. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And synchronicity plays a huge part in that. You know, it's the sound healings and it's all vibration, everything. And to be grounded is to not have that many of those out there, and we're working on them all the time anyway. And they're hooked basically to our spine. They run right up the back muscles, right up through here. This is where our emotions stay, and it's connected to our breath because our chest is expanding and contracting when we breathe. So I don't know what else I can say about that. I mean, there's many things, but I want to give other people a chance to talk.
Was your the title of your book was that prisoners of our own beliefs or opinion? What was it?
Prisoners of our own beliefs.
Of our own beliefs. Okay, good. Thank you. Dad, what would you like to add?
Oh, really? What I would add is, for all the listeners out there that are listening to our conversation, you know, some people may have walls that they've built up of resistance because they've spent so much of their life living in a state of fear, you know, because they may have watched their family members and their parents, you know, the people that are closest to them, they may have mirrored, you know, some of their patterns of behavior, you know, and I speak on that because, and that's what, you know, Gary was mentioning partly, and the others too, was, you know, we have to learn how to surrender and let go of that fear. But sometimes it takes total and utter surrender, you know, total and utter ability to just let it go, you know, almost to the point where, you know, you're not really concerned on the outcome because you trust in the divine, you know, the divine good, the divine will of God, you know, and the divine synchronicities and timings that it takes. You know, it's almost like coming to a final bill that you're going to be evicted from your house and you don't know where the money's going to come from, but you say, I don't worry about it. I have no fear, God. I leave it in your hands and I know it will all work out. And you have to really mean it when you say it. And then when it comes right down to when you need the money, it all of a sudden shows up. It's all of a sudden there, you know, and that's what Gary was talking about being in the flow too, you know. But it takes being so brave to learn how to develop new patterns where you can truly be able to surrender and let go, you know. And there's a lot of great books out there that talk about this subject, you know. I've read several different ones on the subject that they all come back to saying the same thing, is that you have to stop resisting. You have to just start, you know, letting go of, you have to sit with your fear, figure out what your fears are, and learn how to dissolve those fears and realize there really is no fear, because all fears go back to the fear of death, you know, the fear of not having a fulfilled life. And when you start to realize there's not even a reason to fear that, because, you know, death is inevitable, it's going to happen, you know. And if you have fear of those things, then just start using that as a catalyst to start living. You're living your life in some great and joyful and a grateful way that you can every day, you know. you know, just being grateful first of what you have, you know, and then don't look so much at what you're lacking. Instead, be grateful for what you have, you know. So that's at the moment, you know, really what I could add, because it just really, it all comes down to that of letting go of those very core, very basic emotions that are in such an acidic, negative state. You know, that's shame is the lowest. You know, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a guy. He's a little bit more, I guess, spiritual than he is religious, in the sense of that spiritual state. But his name's Dr. David Hawkins, and he has a chart of levels of consciousness, and shame is at the very bottom. You know, and he talks about all of those levels of consciousness are really like what we're talking about, vibrations of energy. You know, and he also has a really good book talking about letting go. You know, and then there's several different people. Another great author that I read a book on was from Michael Singer. You know, talking about the untethered soul. You know, talking about just surrendering, just letting go, and noticing that as soon as you let go, then it's almost like you're set in the right lane that you need to be in, you know, and so that's what I just wanted to convey to the listeners, because some people may say, you know, well, how do I begin to do that? Because I feel so locked into my fear. I feel so trapped. I feel so helpless, you know, but you have to remember, you know, what you think about creates your reality, because it creates what you say, and what you say definitely creates your actions, because all of that is energy. There is a universal law. The energy you put out is the energy you receive back. It's always going to be that way. That's undisputable. There's nothing that can ever argue with that, you know, because that's one of the laws of the universe. You know, just like Dr. Morris and these people, great people, talking about the law of cause and effect. You know, it's all in that same synchronicity of the energy you put out is the energy you get back. So you want to focus on the life, and you want to focus on the energy you want to receive back, because the energy you put out, it's always going to come back multiplied. You know, so that's another example that, you know, people just need to have more awareness. They just need to be more aware, and they just need to learn how to start developing better habits on things that they want to see come true in their life, not on things that they fear that may happen. You know, and it's just like I've talked about with many people before, on they have problems sleeping. And I say, well, let me guess. You can't shut off your mind. You lay down to go to bed, and you can't stop thinking about the things you wish you had done, the things you need to do tomorrow, the things that you wish that still would come true in your life, blah, so on and so on and so on. When really, even Dr. Wayne Dyer talked about, he said that you want to spend the last 5 to 10 minutes of your life focusing, last 5 to 10 minutes before you go to sleep, focusing on the things you want to see come true in your life, not the things that you're worried about, not the things that you still have to do, not the bills that you still have to pay, and all these things, you know, that people have a tendency to be overwhelmed about, you know, and you'll notice that you'll drift off asleep so much better, you know, feeling happy about how can you make your dreams come true, you know, and the things that you're grateful for, and the things that you're appreciative in your life, you know. So these are just all reminders that our souls really already know that's true. We just have to align with that. We have to get out of the ego and the monkey mind, where it's just hung up on those patterns that we can so easily get into, and then we can play the victim card, and we can feel like, oh, worries me, oh, I have problems worse than others, you know, people need to give me some, you know, more love, because I'm lacking love, and I don't know how to create enough love for myself, you know. So, you know, and that's people sometimes too externalizing too much on everything out there can be their solution, when sometimes you just need to go inward and then reconnect with God and that divine energy, that divine flow, that divine synchronicity, all of those things, you know. And then also lastly, I'll add that sometimes you have to stop focusing on so much on what you want, and just trust that it will come your way when it's meant to, because it's almost like the more you go chasing it, the harder it is to attain it or to achieve it. And sometimes, you know, you just have to, you know, still stay focused, but don't be obsessed about it, because it's almost like, you're trying to force it, and you don't want to try to force it. You want to just let it flow when it's meant to. We see this all the time in detox. People, they get so impatient, they want it to happen now, and so they'll force it, and then they'll make the detox symptoms way more stronger and harder on themselves than they have to be, when they just have to go slow with it. And remember, that no matter how impatient we become, no matter how excited we become, we didn't create the condition overnight, so it's not going to go away overnight either. So we have to have, patience, and that's a hard one for a lot of people, because a lot of people grew up, especially in this world where we have instant gratification so freely available to us. It's so easy for people to get impatient and not understand how to just calm down and to just be patient with life and how life unfolds the way it's meant to be. And sometimes people get impatient because they think, oh, I'm running out of time. Well, we're all only destined the amount of time we're going to have anyway. So really, what's the reason to have fear about that either? You know what I mean? There's really when you really boil it down to it, and you keep going back to that cardinal fear of shame and fear, then you can start to dissolve that and see, really, what am I scared of? What am I fearful of? What am I ashamed of? Because we're all very similar people. We all come from the same divine flow, same divine energy. We all come from the same, creation of life, so we're all connected. So, and that's why I tell people, you really don't want to say that you hate anyone, because if you hate anyone, you hate a part of yourself, because we're all connected, so you can start to see how universal love, that's what all of the greats always talked about. The more you can have universal love for everything, it's so much easier to not have those negative emotions take you over. But that's what I can contribute at this moment, and then I'll let you go ahead, Sarah. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say real quick on that, Thad, is like when we talked about this at the end of our last show with Toni and Gary too, that when I pray, like if someone really I don't like, or I don't like the situation or how they're doing, I mean, one, I look to see how it reflects on me, like why I really don't like it. But I gave an example of these neighbors we had where the police were always there. They played loud music all through the night and everything. And so what I did is I practiced raising my vibration, my energy, and creating such a bunch of positive energy that they were either going to change or they would leave on their own. And they did leave on their own. Or praying that, I wish that you find something that makes you so happy that you not only change yourself, but that happiness changes the world for good. And when you start learning to pray like that, and it is a practice, it is not easy at all. All of us, I'll fly off the handle like, what are you like, and then I'm like, whoa, bring it back in. Okay. We switch it. So it is a practice. And the more you practice, just like anything, it becomes easier.
Well,
Yeah,
that was all I had to say. Go ahead.
well, what I just thought of to reply back to what you said, Sarah, is that I think another thing too that people need to understand is that so much of life is a growing experience that you're just learning on top of what you've or you're growing on top of what you've learned previously, and that you can't never you can't imagine what it's going to be like in the future until you get there, because you don't know all the steps beforehand on what it's going to take for you to get to that stage. And that's why people need to understand that you don't want to go back and ever change what happened in the past, no matter what happened, because if you did, then one of those steps would have been missing that you needed to get you to where you are today. Because again, that goes back to divine order, divine frequency, divine, happenstance, divine timing. Everything happens the way it's supposed to. Maybe not the way you want it to, but the way it's supposed to, for the good of everything, because, and some people may say, well, why does bad things happen then? Well, that's just part of the divine order of the universe, and the divine flow of God, and the way things are, because and especially on this planet, because we live in the land of duality, and so it's just understanding sometimes we have to give ourselves grace because we may not understand what's going on now, but when you get to the future and you look back in hindsight, you'll say, well, I see now how that had to go a certain way for me to understand the lesson that I needed to learn from that experience. Because I feel completely confident in saying that we came here as spirits to have a growing learning experience, and that was meant to be challenging. And I mean challenging because the more challenging it is, the more you should be celebrating that it's challenging, because the more challenging it is, the more you can grow from that
Mhm.
if you have the willingness to be humble and to be empathic and to have empathy and have understanding and be able to see all the layers of the complexity, but it goes back to that individual and how much, psychological traumas and things they've had throughout their lives that may be putting up blinders, keeping them from being able to look that deeply into their soul's journey on where they're going and where they've come from, I just think that sometimes we have so many things in our lives these days that make life so comfortable that sometimes people resist change so much, when sometimes that's exactly what they need. We sometimes need those hard moments to get us out of our comfort zone that's making us feel stuck, that's making us feel miserable, and then sometimes people, they get so identified with that disease or that sickness or that victim mentality that they don't want to give it up because they've
Mhm.
identified with it too strongly. They've made it so much a part of their life that they're scared to what are they going to be if they don't play that part anymore, or that actor, that character that they're playing currently in their life, when they don't realize, what if something better is destined for you than that? You just need to let that go and be okay with it, and and it's so easy to get attached to things in the world. That's been a big challenge of my own, just getting attached to things that I'm really love and have a lot of gratefulness for, like even my family still being alive, my being attached to my pets, and then being attached to some possessions. But the more you learn that, that everything is temporary. So if you love those things, then just be appreciative of them. Just never take them for granted for being there in your life, because you could have them one day and then they could not be there the next day. So again, it's just a reminder that if you really care for it that much, don't become so attached to it that you become like a slave to it, or it becomes like a ball and chain on your ankle. But at the same time, just be grateful that you even have it in your life to begin with. And I just think that with age and wisdom comes clarity and comes better understanding, if you are willing to get the mind and the ego out of the way sometimes, and you can have self-contemplation. Because awareness and contemplation and meditation, all of those things are very needed to really help to just to ponder and to think about these things in such a deeper level, and to have self-analyzation, have world analyzation, have family analyzation, where you just think about things very openly, almost like you are your own psychologist, you are your own therapist, and of course it is good to have outside influences and point of views, but sometimes, that's why all the greats, including Dr. Morris, has said, all the answers you seek are found within, because that's the doorway to the divine. That's the doorway to God. That's why, I feel very confident in saying that the more you want to come closer to God is through meditation and prayer, because sometimes, meditation is just as valuable as prayer, because meditation helps to quiet the mind, and it helps to quiet the overthinking addiction that we can develop. Sometimes we don't realize, and this goes back to what Gary was saying, and Eckhart Tolle even said it. He said, the addiction to overthinking creates shallow breathing. And so much of, like Gary was saying, our vagus nerve and our nervous system, it's all connected to the breath. And breath is life. Breath is more important than your water and your food, because, and that's just like, all of the sacred things have talked about breath. I mean, he even said he breathed life into Adam. He breathed life into life, because again, it's breath, it's oxygen, but also it's more than just the air moving through the lungs. It's the vibrations. That's why that's so important, because those vibrations, that's why the humming, the chanting, the singing, that's very important, because those vibrations that are stimulating the nervous system and their energy, those energy. I was listening to some people talking about the Tibetan singing bowls and how we are made up of 70% water besides the lymphatic fluid in the blood. And when you use those different frequencies of those singing bowls, they vibrate those frequencies that really affects our bodies in such therapeutic ways. And that's also why, not to get too off the deep end on our conversation, but it's tying in with what we're saying, is that a lot of people don't know that. I think it was in the late 1800s, they destroyed like 150,000 giant bells, all in Europe and just different places in the world, because they were literally sound therapy, that they would use in the churches and the cathedrals and all these large, huge buildings, that they were literally sound therapy, not only for the people that went to those places to worship, but also in the communities where they lived. And they found out so much that they were so beneficial in the healing of the body that they destroyed them all, so, and that's kind of controversial because no one talks about it, but it is true, because I mean, again, it goes back to, frequencies of energy, but yeah, y'all go ahead. I enjoy the conversation.
So one of the things I wanted to bring up was, when we go to let's say we're just starting, right? And we go to a seminar and you hear somebody say, "Oh my God, this is exactly what I've been looking for. I'm kind of stuck where I am." And they get all excited, and then they go back home and they're standing in the circle of influence that's lowering their energy. And they have to learn how to let go of that, to step beyond that circle of influence, to become themselves and move on. And this is why we kind of separate from each other, because they're on a different frequency, and that's okay. That's their frequency, but they will keep trying to pull you back into it until you're strong enough to go on your own. And that's the lesson. The lesson is that we're all individuals, but we're also the whole all at the same time. We're going to find pockets. Like if you're in a crowd and you can't get away from it, and everybody in that crowd is coughing, eventually you'll start coughing. Not to fit in, but it's something, or it's a vibration that we're picking up. Yawning, sleepiness. We have to learn to. We don't have to do anything, actually. The less we do, the better. The less we do, the more in touch we are with ourselves, because we're not thinking about the outside world. We're at peace in here. And between here, this is what we're trained to do. We're trained to overthink and underfeel. And it's in our story. It comes out through our words. Our words are quantum energy. Our breath is quantum energy. The first one is in, it turned your body on and gave you life. And the last one is out, and energy goes back to source, and the body stays here. So this and the story we tell is important. And when we become the observer of our own story, we can hear what we're saying. Finally, we can hear what we're saying, and then we can evaluate that and say, is this really serving my higher good? Or this is serving my higher good, and I need to follow that. And it's not that we don't like the people over there. We're just not in that frequency anymore. We're not in that vibration, even though they're trying to pull us back, because they don't want to lose you in that group. So this is what happens as far as I'm concerned, in high school. Many of the people don't move on. Some do move on. Some you'll never see again. But when you do run into them, the ones that you were friends with, they only remember you the way you were in school. And they have no clue what you've been doing or where you're going. And if it's positive and it's a higher vibrational frequency, they don't believe it, because they know who you are, or they think they do. And they're still stuck in that vibration. They're still stuck in that story. And like the disease that Dad was talking about, when we own a disease, it owns us. And until we're strong enough to step outside it, because if this is divine energy, and I've showed this in other videos, if this is divine energy, it's everything is perfect, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Over time, if we get weak in certain areas, that energy is going to start to diminish. This is what the American Medical Association does. They use a language we don't understand, and they scare the crap out of people. And that energy starts to drop. And it doesn't mean you'll have, but you'll be susceptible to things like cold and flu, fibromyalgia, and Hashimoto's, and Parkinson's, and MS, and cancer. All 22,000 listed diseases that they have listed and have chemicals for, they're frequencies. The medication is a frequency. And if they, once through breath especially, and a good story, we start to raise that vibration up, and that can no longer exist. Cancer can be wiped out, MS, Parkinson's. These are frequencies, and we're carrying them in us, and we are told that we'll never go away. You'd be on this medication for the rest of your life. Well, it's not true unless we give our power over to them, because we're more powerful than the dis-ease that lives within us, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So we have to be careful of our circle of influence. This circle of influence right here, all of us here, we're all on the same page, and we want to elevate our vibration as to see. And this is the thing, it doesn't really raise, it awakens. That's what awaken is to me, is to awaken inside, to be the observer of your own story, of your own life, and shift it and change it. If you go through a relationship breakup, it hurts. But over time, and you find somebody new, you start to build a new story, and that new story becomes stronger than the old one. And there may be some things back there, trauma or whatever, that came out of that, but it's in your breath. And when you release that, you give your body permission, you're doing your breath work, your exhale is when it comes out. And you say, is this serving my higher good? And if your body feels, because that's what we've forgotten how to feel, when the body feels, we can ask that question, is this serving my higher good? And the body will answer you. And if it isn't, tell it to get out, and keep doing the breath work and pushing that out with your exhale, pushing it out, getting rid of it. And you will find that you feel lighter. It's easier to breathe, especially if it's something that's causing lung issues, depression, or anything like that, because it's heavy on the chest and the shoulders. So really, that I just wanted to bring that up. Our circle of influence is extremely important, and this is a great circle of influence for us, because we're all conscious, we're all observers, we're all waking up to how powerful that we really are, and how manipulative the media is. So I'll let somebody else talk now. Thank you.
There are a lot of things that happen in all our lives, and sometimes we see right away what is going on and how it was meant to be. Everything happens for a reason has been stuck in my mind for a very, very long time. I think it even goes back to my 20s. So actually that meant that I didn't have the idea about God. I didn't know what God was. I knew there was some higher spiritual being, but I was not religious, although raised Catholic. But I had to learn a lot. But even then, it was like everything happens for a reason. And that for me meant things were easier to accept. But did I have peace for it? Did I make the absolute wrong decisions? Of course. Many, many, many times, only to learn more. And but that's everything happens for a reason, and I hear myself saying it to some of my clients too. And it is hard, when you have someone who is stuck in blames what is going on their lives on so many other things, like, doctors, the disease, of course, and they can't see that there isn't a reason for it. And I learned that, well, you could say the hard way, of being sick for a long, long time. I couldn't work anymore. I couldn't concentrate. I had a heart attack. I actually had 2 heart attacks. I'm still here. And I had a broken femur. That was actually the time I was in the hospital that I started with the a health coach. This is 11 years ago, 10 years ago, with the health coach education, not by Dr. Morse, but a company that's called IIN. I don't even know where those letters stand for anymore. But anyway, it's things started changing when I went on all raw in high fruit, and there was a peace coming over me, and I started to see and understand God more, and things became easier. And over the years, I had an idea about what my perfect place to live would be. It would be in the mountains, a forest around me. There would be a lake, there would be peace, there would be wild animals, and there would be a nice place for me to be. It never happens. And there's a picture that has been in my mind for over 20 years. And you would say you would expect it to have manifest already, but it did not. But what did I get? I did get that peace, but in a completely different way. And I realized this is just what it had to be, because I'm completely happy with where I am in how it is, how my surroundings is, how my home turned out, in my relationship. It is absolute perfection. But for me, it was like being at peace with how things come to you, and with the illness, and realizing how I could get out of it, or realizing it was put right in front of my nose. There was no way around going Dr. Morse when I once had seen him, but it was put there at the right time. And sometimes, and I mentioned that when we were chatting before we opened it up with the group, it was now I can see that intuition that we have, that very first thought. I see it, and that is the voice of God. And what do? We start arguing with it. Like, nah, maybe I should. And then later coming back to, yeah, I should have done it that way. And now I don't have that anymore. It's just I don't argue with it. It's like I accept, I appreciate, I'm very aware, and I'm absolutely total grateful for everything. I still have my health issues, some severe, and I know that will be better too, because there is a reason for it, that things are the way they are. Now, I must say that even though I see a lot of divine synchronicity throughout my life, how things happen, the people that I met, always being aware they were on my path at that time for a reason. And I met so many beautiful people. And after a lot of trauma that I had to go through as to way in my 20s, it gave that all these experience gave me back the I'm looking for a word. It's not confidence, but that I could trust people again, because I didn't. And with that trust came more being at peace, and seeing what God is for me, how I can see it, what it does. And I absolutely agree with everything that Gary and Ted and Katie and Sara, were sharing. And when people ask, yeah, it's all nice and well what you're saying, but how am I going to do it? Well, of course, we start with the breathing. Even that just said, your breath is the most important, and it's written everywhere. It's in the Bible. It's like, without breath, you have nothing. And I'm very aware of not breathing correctly, and But it is okay. I had up till in my 20s, I was always breathing through my mouth. I had difficulties breathing. And once I realized this was not the right way to breathe, I started learning that, you breathe through your nose. And I started the deep breathing. And when anxiety popped up, that was breathing. So I've been doing that for a long, long time. And it was always the first step to do. We would say, when we get sick and we feel bad, stop eating. That should, just drink water. That is the fast. That is the first thing. But no, the first thing is correct breathing. Then you can fast. And your movements, I love that one that you're doing, Gary. Everyone I have been talking to, I said, keep it simple. You do need to move, but do it the easy way. You're still moving. So it is, yeah. I'm very happy with all the people that I met, and I see that as a divine synchronicity for for the people, you being listening to what we are saying. That too is divine synchronicity. You are meant to hear this. You are meant to be here and to move on. And if you need help with any part of what we are, sharing with you, you can connect with us in the description of this video. It's all the way at the bottom. There is a contact information to all five of us. So if you want to talk, and I think everyone is open to that, you want to talk to us, that is possible.
Yeah, and Tony, I was going to add to something that you said is that um, we are all creating on every second that we're alive. We're creating by our thoughts. The mind even comes before the breath, because you have to, I mean, breathing is part of part of the nervous system. I can't remember if it's the parasympathetic or sympathetic, but it's part of the nervous system that does happen without your conscious awareness, but at the same time, though, we can have conscious influence over our breathing as well too. So what I just wanted to remind people is that it all goes back to how you train your mind and how you use your mind, and your awareness of how you use your mind, and your connection between your heart and your mind, because that heart path connection, is that understanding that the heart is more powerful than the mind, because the heart emanates so much more power, and you have a direct connection between the heart and the amygdala of the mind, and energy moves between those faster than we're even aware. And so it goes back to, thoughts are such an influence on everything. And so you want to really align yourself with, those thoughts that will create the reality that you wish to experience, and going back to divine synchronicity, is that sometimes we have to use our thoughts to influence our speech, to declare that we want to be directed by God's divine synchronicities and energy and wisdom and timing and all that, by just continuing to say, put me in the path that I need to be, place me in the direction that I need to go, continuing to focus again your thoughts and your energy and your speaking on the path that will lead you to your greatness, but at the same time being open to whatever direction that is. Don't let the mind override the fact that you might need to go down here when you don't even know what's down there. And a lot of times people are scared, because they don't know where that path leads. But again, we just have to have trust and faith and understanding that no matter what happens, it will work out for our betterment. And so again, it goes back to your thoughts. It always goes back to your thoughts and how you use the mind, because that influences so much of who we are. It even influences your DNA constantly. Your DNA is ever changing, just like
Mhm,
Bruce Lipton talks about. Bruce Lipton
mhm,
talks about, as well as Dr. Jensen talked about it. He talks about that your genetics and your DNA of who you are changed according to the way you think and the way you use your mind. And you can see that. And I even remember talking to a gentleman that he had a lung weakness, and I seen it in his iridology, and I was like, well, that can happen sometimes from great loss and great depression and sadness because of the affecting of how you breathe. And he
mhm.
said, well, I can totally see that connection because he just had a great loss in his family not too long before I gave him that reading, and so that's what I'm getting at, and I'm helping people, or I'm trying to convey to the listeners and everyone, is that, you just really have to go back to being constantly aware every day on what you're thinking, because that is, you're constantly creating from what you're thinking. Because remember, creation leads to thinking leads to speaking, and speaking leads to acting, and all of those are frequencies of energy, because they're all energy you're putting out, because you're creating that energy. So the more you have awareness on what you're doing, what your actions, and what you're thinking, and what you're putting your focus on, that can lead to you making sure every day that you're aligning yourself with the things that you're happy and joyful in what you're doing, that you're creating, and including what you're thinking, and all those things I just mentioned. So you can constantly keep being the observer. I remembered Eckhart Tolle talked about one time that, really your spirit or your soul is the great observer. It doesn't really have an opinion, it doesn't have an ego, it doesn't have a mind. That's all part of the body. It's just a great observer. And it's always in the background, just observing what's going on. And then that way you can think about your true self is really just observing what your body and your mind and everything is doing throughout life. And it can sometimes override those parts of who you are by saying, okay, does that align with my spiritual path? My spirit's, my soul's path that it come here to experience, and on this world, not just what my body wants to do and my mind and everything wants to do on this planet while you're here and using this vehicle that we have to experience life. Because sometimes people, they identify so much with the body and they forget they're even a spirit or a soul, because they come to this planet and they get overtaken and overwhelmed with the whole experience of being a human. And so sometimes you have to step back and you have to remind yourself that you're so much more than that, and that you have to just keep refocusing your attention, your focus, constantly every day. And so that's just what I wanted to add to conversation, because I think it's very important for people to be aware, be very aware of all your actions you do, and be aware of the outcomes that come from those actions. Yeah.
What I want to add a little tidbit about what you mentioned with thoughts come first, and how true that is. But I found that once I started on all fruit, my thoughts started changing. I got in a higher frequency, and everything changed around me. My connection with people, the people that were connected with me, and everything became easier. But that was after I still had to decide to go on all fruit, but it was so clearly put in front of me. There was no way around it. And I got out of a pretty big depression because of how sick I was. So it was the fruit, the higher frequency that changed it for me.
Yeah, well, Tony, what you just said right there, let's address that for a moment. Is that if you don't have enough awareness, the higher vibrational foods and substances, like even going out in nature, spending time at the beach, going out to a beautiful waterfall, going out somewhere that is really raising your vibrations of energy very quickly and very positively, it's going to bring up all of the negative energy that's residing in your body that needs to be resolved. It needs to be addressed. And see, that's what's very hard for people. And that's why if you'll hear people all the time, I was just reading someone on Facebook that they posted that they were like, I can't do the raw diet anymore because I tried all fruits and I could only go 6 months. And then it started creating all these other problems. And I started just, I couldn't be stable mentally and emotionally and spiritually and all these things. And I'm like, well, that was because it was overwhelming them because they couldn't handle feeling so vibrationally aware. They couldn't handle, having everything coming up at once, and they couldn't handle all the things that were going on currently with their life, as well as all the things that have been happening in the last couple of years, much less going back to their childhood, and even possible family baggage that they've been carrying that was passed down to them through their family heritage, line, through from their parents, parents, and on and on, and so that's what people need to be aware of, is that when you decide to do something that, if you've been living lots of your life on a lower vibrational state, eating lower vibrational foods, because they're mostly cooked and they're mostly things that are lower vibrational, and then you start to up that vibration the more and more, then be ready for the things that come up, and don't feel like you're being punished, or you're don't feel like things are going, because sometimes people, they fear the things that are coming up, thinking that, oh, something's wrong because it's coming up. They don't understand that it's coming up to help you, to help you to resolve it, to help you to move past it, to help you to unwind it, to help you to love that part of yourself that may have not been loved before, and you suppressed it and you ran away from it and you didn't address it. And sometimes people think that's the solution to their hardships, when they don't realize it's always going to come back to address it again, or some people say to haunt you again, but you don't have to look at it that way. It's not really something to haunt you. It's something that you just still need to address. You either need to work through it, you need to transmute it, you need to let it go, to surrender, and to really address it. Whether you need to cry, you need to laugh, you need to forgive, you need to, whatever you need to do to be able to let it go, but that's the biggest thing, is that some people aren't ready. They make this plea with themselves, oh, I can't never go back to that place, I can't never feel those feelings again, I can't forgive myself for that, I can't forgive others for that. And they don't realize they are becoming the victim, they're becoming the slave to that energy if you're not able to be willing to work through it. And so that's the problem for a lot of people, when they've never really spent much of their life, if any, in some cases, where they've went that higher vibrational. Because also, here's another factor we need to address, is the more stimulants you take away, then you are left with your rawness of who you are. And I mean, people don't think of how so many of the foods and substances we consume are stimulants. And the more stimulants, even television, movies, all these things are stimulants, and the more that you take away that all of those stimulants, you're just left sitting with your rawness. That's why you can always tell someone that's psychologically unstable, they can't sit alone in a room by themselves for very long, because they're not comfortable being in that alone state just with themselves. And that's why in so much of our culture, you have to have a phone or a book or something to distract yourself. You can't be very comfortable just with yourself, and so that's another thing that's hard for a lot of people, when they take away all of those stimulants and those things. Even salt, for just an example, for some people, it's an overstimulant, and so it makes it where it's hard for people to be able to sit in that, that non-sedated, non-stimulated state. So that's another thing that I wanted to address when you talked about that, Toni, because some people, I could hear the thoughts out there in the atmosphere. Some people saying, well, I tried all fruit and that was just too hard. I just can't go back there. That's too hard,
Yeah, but eventually when we get to that higher frequency, we can see things different, and some people just get there by, talking with us, sharing with us, and we can guide them, and we can, guide. I think the right word is guide them, is they need to take a step back, and when we get to everything happens for a reason, that too does, and I see the beauty of it now, and I know a lot of people are far, far away from it. I see a lot of, and I hear a lot of troubles that people are going through and not wanting, absolutely not wanting to accept that things happen for a reason. And the sadness, I find it sad that they cannot see that so many things happened in their life where it all came together. And I think when we can help people see that, and we can help that divine synchronicity see that, then it is another step forward. Oh, Katie had to leave. Well, we are at 1:12 right now. Gary, Sarah, if you
Uh,
want to.
Yeah, I wanted to say one more other thing. I was just a little too far away from my phone, but I wanted to also say too, and I know we touched on this as well, Tony, but I have heard other people talk about that we have to be perfect. We have to be perfectly healed before we can, start the Dr. Morris's work or even start sharing our experiences with people or even teaching. And I think that is so wrong because if we were completely healed and we were completely at God level, we wouldn't be here anymore. We would have moved on to the next level of life or whatever that may be. But none of us know what that is because all of us right here, right now, haven't reached that level yet. So no matter what level you are, you could be an amazing researcher still. You could have a wonderful heart that could touch people and inspire people. So no matter what level you are, don't feel like you have to be fully healed. I mean, we may have things that we don't even know what we have yet that aren't even healed at this point. So no matter what, we all have a voice, we all have a heart, we all have energy fields, and by us all coming together, no matter what level we are, we all play a part of this giant tapestry of life. So sew your little piece that you're part of and help us all make this beautiful picture together. And know that what you were in your past doesn't mean that's what you are now. And it doesn't mean what you are now is what you're going to be in the future either. We're forever changing, we're forever evolving. And don't ever let anyone tell you that you're not far enough along on your path to do anything like that. Don't be egoic about it either. Know that we're all always learning, and the best thing of all is learning from each other and each other's experiences.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, that is so true. I have family visiting and from the Netherlands, so I'm going to end this conversation. And I know we all have a lot more to share, but we'll save it for the next time. So thank you for being here, Katie. Thank you for being here, Gary, and Ted, and Sarah. And I would say you guys are also beautiful. I really love you. Thank you so
We
much.
love you too, Tony and Thad and
Yes.
Katie and Gary. Thank you so much. And I would love to do another one of these shows too, and we could just continue on because I think they're very inspiring for people. And a lot of people do need an inspiration, especially in this world of uncertainty.
Thank you. So till the next
And-
time. Oh, the next time will not be next week, July the 4th. I will be on vacation on a beach with my family. And so the week after we will be back. I have no clue about the topic. It will come to me. And thank you. Thank you all for being here. Much love to
Well,
everyone
Tony,
listening.
I think Gary was trying to say something. Were you, Gary?
Oh, I'm sorry, Gary.
Oh, no, no, that's okay. We'll do it in the next one if I remember
No, tell me, what were you going to say?
it. I don't know that I actually remember because it was kind of flowing through me. That just to be aware of our story and who is around us and what they're saying and what direction they're pulling us in. Okay, it's extremely important to be able to listen to a conversation, that's coming to you, and be able to figure out where that person is trying to take us. And if it's not for your higher good, for your benefit, then we have to take that and absorb what's useful to us and disregard the rest, because that's what the body does. And we're running into all this synthetic food now. And if they get complete synthetic food, they will control every vitamin, mineral, amino acid, electrolyte, and they already have a plastic pancreas that they can put in, and it uses synthetic enzymes to digest your food. So, I mean, do we need that? No, we need to clean it out, not cut it out. So be careful when you go somewhere what their influence is and what they're trying to pull you into. And that's true with everyone, because most people they believe that they're medically minded. And we know the third leading cause of death is the American Medical Association. So, and that's by their report, not mine. So to stay uplifted, to breathe, when you feel stress coming in, take a deep breath, even if it's through your mouth, and just give yourself permission to relax when you exhale. And you'll find that life will be a lot smoother. And be careful of the water you're drinking. We don't want fluorides and chlorines and bromines and all these different things that they're putting in the water. We want to make sure we filter our water if it's city water. And if you have a well, just test it and see what's in it. But it's a constant thing. When we go in the cities and things, we know we're drinking fluoridated water. Well, there are ways to get that out, and we should really try to do that, because as we were talking about in the pineal gland, I mean, it will start to calcify it. So just little things like that, and not to be stressed out about it. Just do the best you can to try to correct it. So I guess I don't know if that's what I had to say or not, but that's that kind of.
Well, thank you, Gary. If it was meant to be, it was just meant to be. You had to get it out.
Yeah, I kind of like to think what he says is this: just have hyper awareness on every single thing that you do, every way you live, every action you take, every action that comes before you, every situation that comes before you. Stop before you act. Stop before you do anything and just think, okay, is this what I want to bring into my life? Do I want to do I want to participate in this? Because a lot of times people act before they even think about the consequences, and that's very bad, because you can't take back some of the things that you do once you've done it,
Right.
And that's why you got to be very aware, and also you need to have some foresight to think ahead to some, and that's what we have problem with so much in this society. They wait till they have a blowout on their tire to even say, well, man, maybe I should have got my tires rotated and took care of my tires better. And that's an analogy of our bodies too, is that, we can't wait till we have something serious happen and then think, oh, well, now it's time to work on fixing that. Well, what about all the preventative? What about all the maintenance? What about all the things you could have done 5 to 10 years before it ever got to that chronic stage? So, and it's the same thing with a lot of stuff, that's going on in our lives. We just have to have enough awareness to put our attention on the things that really matter. Don't put your things on attention on things that are fleeting and temporarily and materialistic things, and things that's just really not going to give you lasting, benefits and lasting happiness and joy, and so that's what we need to be aware of. I mean, it's even with vanity these days, it's very sad, and we can go off on that whole other topic, but it's just really sad. I'm hearing, I don't know about you guys, and I'm not trying to dive off this deep end because I know we're getting ready to close out the show, but I just want to touch on this briefly, is that I know you guys have probably heard, just like I have, how much health problems are coming up because our society has been over tattooing themselves. I'm talking about the people's lymph nodes are turning black. They're having all kind of reactions to all these chemicals, and it's not happening overnight. It's happening after they've gotten such a degree of those alterations to their body, all for vanity, and then it ends up causing them so much more problems than they had before. When it wasn't something that you had to have because it was some life-threatening situation. it was just for looks, for vanity, you know. So we need to just stop and be aware of really everything we're doing, because so many times we don't realize why we're doing what we're doing until it's till you're in the thick of a situation that you brought upon yourself, you know. And we need to take responsibility for sometimes not having the awareness. And don't be hard on ourselves. Don't beat ourselves up for, you know, for something that we didn't know previously that now you do know better, you know, and how to do better, you know. So that's all I was wanting to add to what he was saying just right quick, is just have hyper awareness on everything you do, and just be aware that you're okay and you're happy with the outcomes on those choices that you make, you know.
Thank you, Ted. I already have the topic for the next podcast.
I was wondering about that.
Well, it's actually easy because it is how to prevent this ease.
Yes.
So yeah, and what you said, Gary, and what Ted said, and especially about the tattoos, all comes into it. So let's dive into that in 2 weeks. So
Okay.
now we're
Fantastic.
really gonna close it. Thank you, guys.
Sounds good.
Bye bye.
Thank you all.
Bye bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Take